Welcome into the Sports Objective, the unofficial podcast of the Pirates. And Bubba, we're very excited. I'll tell you what, I'm very excited about this show. I was telling our first guest that I feel very safe because my name is Dave, and we have a lot of Daves tonight. The Daves have gone wild.
Yeah, we do. I was talking to one of our loyal viewers and listeners, Johnny Gardner, earlier this afternoon about tonight's show, and he said, yes, the Triple Dave show. He said Dave Richmond, Dave LaMont, who you see there on the bottom of the screen from ESPN, and during the second half hour, we'll catch up with Dave Goren, who's been in the Winston-Salem area for 30-plus years and is the executive director of the NSMA, the National Sports Media Association.
Very excited to have you on, Dave. Thanks so much. I like your name, and certainly love all the stuff you're doing now for ESPN and all that. And welcome into the show. We were just talking before the show, pre-show, that we're living in a really interesting time. I never thought I'd be doing a show from my living room, but certainly with COVID-19, we're all on the screen doing social distancing. And how have you been making out as far as that COVID-19 is concerned? We'll start out there.
Well, it's really been, first off, thank you all very much for having me. I have spent some time in Greenville this past basketball season and really enjoyed it. And I hope, best wishes to the Pirates for the upcoming season if we have it and everything. It's been up and down. From a personal level, we had a house full of kids and girlfriends and all that for a while. And it was actually kind of lively and fun, believe it or not. Now it's just my wife and I and our thoughts, which isn't necessarily the best thing in the world. It's funny. I've got one son who's an athlete, a basketball player at Wyoming, who just got into Wyoming. Imagine going from South Florida to Laramie. And he's adjusting to all of that and hoping that they have, at the very least, a conference season. My other son, who did play basketball, was interning with the Dallas Mavericks when the COVID hit. In fact, he was at that last NBA game that was played in March. And he came back home, and now he's at Texas Tech as a GA. For Coach Beard, and 2 days after he gets in Lubbock, somebody on the team tested positive. So they had to shut that down at the beginning of June, and then one of his roommates tested, so he had to move out of his brand new apartment that he had just moved into. Everything at Texas Tech seems to be stable, but it's that's the stories you hear in college athletics right now, and there's so much instability, particularly regarding football. And as a broadcaster, you do what you can. I've started doing shows on Facebook Live that I link to YouTube just to keep busy, just to have an outlet. Otherwise, working on my hair, and that's about it. And Dave, that's not a shot at you.
Yeah, so. I know. I was going to say we don't have that in common, so that's right. I'm very low maintenance. It's all good. Saves money on the combs and brushes. But anyway, Dave, as far as you were talking about the Pirates with basketball, it was one of the things I was going to ask you about. With Coach Joe Dooley, and certainly, what do you think about the progress? In fact, they did a great job. Joe, we lost Coach Chills, but we got replaced Antoine Jackson, who had been at Cincinnati, who knows the American very well. So we're very excited. It's funny that Bubba and I are diehard fans of East Carolina. I went there, and obviously we cover the Pirates, but it's funny that this is the most I've talked about East Carolina basketball, being a basketball fan and a fan of East Carolina ever, I think, in the history. We've never really had anything to be excited about. We have some glimmer of hope seasons, some great flash in the pan seasons, but nothing really to be happy about. And now with Joe Dooley, the recruiting, the coaches, the program seems to be beyond just shooting right up.
I hope it does. I really like Joe. We spent some time with him. I think we did at least 2 and maybe 3 games. We might have caught him on the road once. And he didn't have a lot to work with when he got there. I mean, I don't have to tell you guys that. And they had a stretch of some pretty good ball. There was no lack of effort. They never quit. They just at times simply weren't good enough. And like a lot of other teams that I noticed that struggled, they need shooting. Number one issue for that team was scoring points. And that's frustrating because if somebody gets a hot streak, even a Tulane can get hot from time to time and give you a hard time. And that was, I thought, the single biggest weakness. But they were certainly not the only team in the American last year that had that problem. And look what happened. USF really didn't have any great shooting, and they struggled. UCF really got off to a bad start with bad shooting. And they struggled when they didn't shoot the ball well. It seems so simple to say. But without that, in today's game, the way it's played, unless you're Virginia and you can win 51-45, you've got to be able to shoot. And I would imagine that is the number one goal for future recruiting classes for Joe.
And Bubba, how many times did you and I talk about after a game, the 3-point shooting, the emoji shaking my head or SMH, how many times there was so many games we lost 6 points or less. And I was like, man, that's just 2 3-pointers. So you're 2 3-pointers away from winning the game. And one of the biggest, probably the biggest Achilles heel for the whole team, once again, was 3-point shooting.
Yeah, far too many games where we had 5 3-pointers or less. That's not going to cut it.
No, today's game is all about the three, and it's if you have a big man, it used to be, hey, we got a 7-footer, that's great. Well, if that 7-footer can't face the basket and fire away, he's not as valuable as he used to be unless he's a real shot blocking presence and somebody you can turn a game around that way. And you don't really see that type in the college game very often. You've got to be able to gun it. And you see the way these coaches, the new hires, and I'll use Wyoming since my son is there as an example. They've got a coach in Jeff Linder who had won at Northern Colorado. And he won by chucking it. And that's what Wyoming's going to do this year. They're going to chuck it. And I guess the goal is we'll just keep shooting until they go in, and our threes will beat your twos.
And Dave is one of our friends of the show and viewers, Johnny Gardner, brought to my attention, I think it's 8 games we lost 6 points or less. So definitely competitive, but it was very frustrating. We were talking about the 3-point shot. You got to have 3-point shooters. The shooting, that's the name of the game. When you literally have guys that are wide open and they're missing over and over again. Mm-hmm. Some of them you're going to miss, but you can't be missing a whole bunch of open shots.
No, but I think you've got the right guy, as I said, and I know it's easy for me to sit here and say patience, 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 but I really think that's what it's going to take. You can't expect to flip a program that quickly. It's going to take a couple of more years of strong recruits. I want to see what happens this year. Can they get to maybe close to 500 in league play? If you do that, assuming that, again, we're going to cross every digit we have, toes and fingers, that we're going to have at least that. If you can come up 500 or say a game or two under 500, that's improvement. And then you can start thinking about, okay, let's go get Houston. Let's go take down Cincinnati. Let's go take on the top shelf programs.
Dave, in the open, I talked about how Dave Goren, our guest that will be joining us here in a little while, he had spent 30-plus years in the Winston-Salem market. You spent a long, long time in that South Florida market down in the Miami area, and you've had some unique experiences having opportunities to be involved with the big three, as they say, on the professional level with the NBA, NFL, and MLB. So talk about those opportunities you've had, and I know you're alum of the U. So
Yes, I am, man. That's the way to do it. Well done.
I like that one with you and Jonathan Vilma, where you guys did it together with the ESPN college football backdrop. So just talk about your background there in the South Florida market.
Yeah, I graduated from the University of Miami, let's just say a long time ago. I'll give you a hint. Howard Schnellenberger was the head coach. Okay. So that's all you need to know about how long ago that was. I was a student broadcaster when he was coaching, and, of course, I was scared to death of the man. But I had already survived interviewing Don Shula when I was 18, 19 years old. So if you can do that, you can pretty much do anything. I think if I went out and climbed Mount Everest in a thong and a sweatshirt and a pair of flip-flops, that would be easier than the intimidation that a guy like Don Shula brought when you're a young reporter. But I did that for a while, a lot of radio reporting. I actually announced High Life for 7 years because I didn't have another job and fell in love with that sport. And it was a wonderful experience. But a lot of radio reporting, got into television as the first host for the Miami Heat in the 90s, which led me to work with the great Dr. Jack Ramsey, which is biggest privilege of my life. And I'm dead serious about that. As a broadcaster and as a person, I've never met anybody like Dr. Jack. And people ask, what's the best thing you've ever done? And I said, you know what? I got to spend 7 years with Dr. Jack. And I wasn't the play-by-play guy, but I'm getting chills now just thinking about that time there. Radio, I did Miami Hurricanes in the 90s, football, basketball, and baseball, 4 College World Series visits, and 1 championship. Only one. The other one went over the fence with Warren Morris hit that cheap little homer for LSU. That was my first visit. I am sitting in the stands with my tape recorder, ready to run down and interview the winning Hurricane team, and there was that little ding. And as I say, I watched my ring go over the right field fence. FAU football, I was there at the beginning when Coach Schnellenberger brought me in. And he and I still are friends and stay in contact. And I've been with ABC and ESPN now since 2004, and I've even dabbled in professional bowling, which I dearly, dearly love.
Let's talk about that. As far as professional bowling is concerned, you told me pre-show that you're actually going to do. That's amazing how technology is today. You're actually going to be on a remote location, or maybe even your house, and you're going to be doing a broadcast with the PBA, I guess, with the legends, or
it's actually in Aberdeen, which I believe is in the Raleigh area, right?
That's Southern Pines,
Southern Pines, Dave.
Pinehurst.
No, and I can't go. You're killing me. Anyway,
it's
that's
the Pinehurst area.
Oh, dang. They're calling it the Battle of the Goats, and that obviously meaning greatest of all time. And there's 3 bowlers: Norm Duke, Pete Weber, and Walter Ray Williams Jr. If you add them up, you've got about 200 titles between the 3 of these guys. And I don't know the format yet, but because of this situation, and it'll be on the internet on Flow Bowling, FLO Bowling. And I just been exchanging emails with them today about they're going to send me some equipment, because being a typical play-by-play guy, this is about the only equipment I have with me, and some pens. And that's about all we carry, and our earpieces. And so I'm going to have to do a little engineering on my own. And look, if we didn't have a virus that is so dangerous, I'm sure I would be right there with those guys, and we would have a nice crowd and all of that. But everybody is using caution. I can't criticize anyone for being cautious. I won't do it. But I'm excited about the event, and I'm dying to see what this format is, because you've got 3 of the greatest ever going at it.
I have a question for you. Are you a golfer?
Yes.
I was going to say, you can, speaking of intimidation, I don't think I am the biggest hacker in the world. I don't think I would ever be allowed to be on anywhere near Pinehurst number 2. Maybe when the U.S. Open comes back.
I played number 9, I think, or 7. I think it was 9. I remember going to an ACC media gathering. Gosh, it had to be at least 10 or plus years ago. And we weren't allowed on number 2, but we did play number 9, which I thought was pretty cool.
No doubt about it. Maybe they'll let me play there one day.
You ought to get out there, just play up. That's the nice thing about golf. I learned as I have gently aged that those different color tees are there for a reason. And you swallow your ego and you go, you know what? I want to have a good time today. I'm going to go up until I feel like this is the one that suits me. That's the only way to do it.
No doubt.
Yeah, you mentioned Pinehurst. My grandparents lived there, and then my mom's parents. I had the opportunity, I guess, was it '99 when the U.S. Open was there. Had the chance to go that year. Did not go the other time or two that it's been at Pinehurst number 2. But a moment ago, you mentioned your experiences in the 1990s with the Hurricanes on the baseball diamond out in Omaha, the legendary Rosenblatt Stadium, unfortunately no longer around. And hasn't been for several years now, but the Wrigley Field of college baseball, so to speak. So to talk about that atmosphere at Rosenblatt Stadium, that's something that East Carolina fans wanted to be able to take part in, but unfortunately never got there before Rosenblatt closed.
Every day felt like a day at the county fair, and I was fortunate enough to go 4 straight years. And you could either do 0-2 and barbecue, as Mike Martin used to say, which didn't happen at Miami, but I think when we won the championship and went 4-0, I had the greatest time, because if you keep winning, you get time off. I'd go play golf. I would have casinos across the river in Iowa. You can have a fantastic time, and I think Omaha is a great city. But Rosenblatt was not fancy, but it was good for the event. And the other thing you notice is how the community really got behind that, and fans would just pick a team. So they might pick Miami. They might pick Oklahoma State or whomever was there, Florida State, Florida. All those teams that I was familiar with were showing up there. And they treated the players well. They treated the broadcasters well. It really is. And I've been lucky to do a lot of cool things. But that, as far as an event, might be number 1 on my list of the most fun and the most almost innocent event. And Bubba, you're right. Things have changed, and that new stadium is gorgeous. I've seen it from the outside, and the downtown area now, they've got the arena, which is known as the arena that Michael Phelps built, where Creighton plays basketball, and they've had the swimming trials there, and it's a beautiful building, and hotels and all that, and they've really upped their ante downtown. But the old days were pretty nice.
Yeah, we definitely will have to go out there. We will be there. We actually at East Carolina having Cliff Godwin there, and they extended his contract, and he'll be here for a number of years. And I know that he'll definitely. It's a question of when. It's not a matter of if. I think it's like 30 times we've been in a regional, and certainly and without going to Omaha. So I think we have the longest streak in the country, and I can't wait for that to be broken, and for us to finally to make it to Omaha.
If you guys remember, and this came up, actually it came up when I was going. They were, and I don't know whether this was just a play to get the new stadium. They were actually talking about having the event in a different city, and I thought that was the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Oh man!
And fortunately, and maybe they used that as leverage. It's always possible. I'm not that naive, but keeping it in Omaha is the right thing to do, and I hope as long as there's a planet Earth, that College World Series stays in Omaha.
No doubt with tradition. Dave, as far as currently now, do you have a schedule beyond the bowling as far as ESPN? Have you just waiting? I guess
Everybody,
we're waiting.
We've already had games canceled. There's I guess a big meeting tomorrow regarding what's going to happen with fall sports in the NCAA and whether the conferences and the networks take their cues from that meeting. Could have a huge effect. Already we're hearing, we already know some conferences are only going to be conference play. So if anybody knows their assignments, they're cheating because they've written them in the grid themselves. It could be it's going to be difficult in a weird year for announcing. I can tell you that. I think there's going to be a lot of studio stuff that's never been done before. There's going to be grave concerns about health, protecting not just the announcers, but the whole crew. Everybody, because there's so many people who plug together a broadcast that that don't get any credit, that deserve credit. And who's going to be there? Who can be there? And not have to worry about their health? Or should we just stick everybody in a room and try to figure out how to do plexiglass and all that? I'm going to find that out shortly. I work part-time. I do some games for the United Soccer League. And I've got a couple of assignments in August, and I will be remotely broadcasting in Hollywood, Florida, about 20 minutes from my house. And there is a list of guidelines they sent me that are staggering just to get in the building. So I'm curious as to how that's going to go. Am I going to be wearing a mask, even though I'm not going to be seen? It's just my voice. And the guy next to me, it's not much wider than your typical desk. So that person, there's so many questions. So I would love to know what's going to happen, Dave, and I can't say.
It's a strange time as far as I know. There's been talk about some people mentioning about certainly about maybe that when if we don't have conferences, if they decide they're not going to play, do you think there's a possibility? I guess anything's possible now in the world we live in, but where you can be playing maybe teams, just in other words, just not pick them. But like one-off games, I guess that's the term, one-off games instead of conferences?
Well, one thing I did hear that I was encouraged about is if they do adapt, if the biggest all the conferences, I think the Mountain West is this close to announcing conference-only play now for football. Somebody came up with the idea, and I read this morning, of a one-off game. In other words, let's say you keep your conference schedule, but you can keep a bonus game, which would allow Florida to play Florida State, would allow Kentucky and Louisville to meet. Non-conference, but genuine rivals. Iowa State could meet potentially. You don't have to be in the same. That way, those are great for the fans, and also allows you that little extra bit of revenue depending on how many people can actually show up in your stadium. That's the other thing that still hasn't been determined. How many people are going to be allowed? We're waiting on what the Dolphins are going to allow. They've already announced, along with the NFL, that you're going to have to wear a face cover, which is fine. But how many people are going to be allowed to go in the stadium? There's so many rules that have yet to be made up, and we're running out of time. It's the 23rd of July already. They've got to make up their minds by the end of the month.
And you were talking as far as fans with certainly with Major League Baseball. I heard the owners say that they have somewhere in the neighborhood of losing $640,000 a game when you think about merchandise and concessions and all that for all the home games. That number is just so staggering to think about with having, what would that be, 81 games, home games. And now you have I used to joke about how baseball is a marathon, and I was talking about my radio show about the very fact it's going from a marathon to a sprint.
And I'm excited about that. I'm happy because it gives us a little injection of normalcy. We've had some NBA exhibition games in the bubble up in Orlando. Major League Soccer so far without incident is using their bubble in Orlando successfully. We'll see what happens with the WNBA down in Bradenton on the other side of the state. There's a lot of, we're going to start getting an issue. College is really in the worst shape. The NFL could probably get away with this, but college is in the worst shape because you have so many people. You can't isolate them in a bubble because that's too many people. So that's impossible. And I'm waiting to see what happens with fall sports. Where was it? Oh, Iowa State. About a week ago, their AD wrote a letter to their boosters and support base and Ames and said it could be up to a $40 million loss if they don't play football. Now, that's just Iowa State. Yes, it's a big school, and Ames is a small college town, and that town revolves around Iowa State. And that's just one place, and that's a lot of cutbacks. And I know coaches have taken salary hits, or should if they haven't, especially the guys making huge bucks. But that's I think that's why we're still, these ADs and presidents are still fighting to try to put something out there, plus whatever trickle effect it's going to have on the networks. And the revenue loss for ESPN, for Fox, and for CBS.
Dave, earlier you talked about during your time as a student at the University of Miami, how you were kind of scared to death of Howard Schnellenberger. Your paths crossed again at FAU when you spent 10 years as the play-by-play voice of the Owls. So do you have a good Howard Schnellenberger story or two from your time with either Miami or FAU?
Well, and with Miami, I just remember the pipe. At that time, he was a pipe smoker. And I would walk in I was also working for a commercial radio station at the time while I was still a student. And I would do the Howard Schnellenberger show one day a week with him. I would just go in his office and it just smelled like a tobacconist's. And he still has, of course, that powerful voice that just comes from his knees, it seems like. And, here I am, and I thought I had pretty good pipes at 20 years old. And it's like, okay, coach, here we are. And what about the Canes today? And he would kind of glare at me a little bit, but he was never mean. And that's the thing I remember most about UM. And the fact that I remember, and I wish I'd kept the darn T-shirt, just to show you what Miami football was like back then. He coined the phrase, "The goal is a bowl," meaning just get us to a bowl game. And that was before you had the mega number of bowl games. And we went to the Peach Bowl in my senior year. And I'll never forget, it was at Fulton County Stadium, and it was a cold, yucky day. And Kurt Gowdy was the announcer, which I thought was a big deal.
Wow.
And I thought, holy smokes, this guy did it. And then 2 years later, they go on to win a national championship with Bernie Kosar. But that I remember, and I remember he used to have to promote. If you Google Howard Schnellenberger, Bobby Bowden photo, they actually had to do sort of corny promotions to sell tickets to that game, because Bowden was also a salesman in his early years in Tallahassee. And somewhere there's going to be a photo of the two of them like old knuckle boxers like this, with you and the FSU Spear trying to get people interested in Miami, Florida State, if you can imagine that.
Wow. That's hard to believe. We have Dave, you probably know, we have a pretty great memory of the Peach Bowl as well at East Carolina in January 1st, 1992. So where we beat NC State, and one of the biggest games certainly of our program. So certainly I'll tell you what, Bubba, that was one of my favorite football games, and it was the last football game at Fulton County Stadium. So definitely a great way to send out the stadium, I think. Maybe NC State fans would not agree with us on that one.
And he also referenced, and Dave, I just wanted to piggyback off what you were saying as far as that 1983 Miami team. East Carolina had a very good season in 1983.
Yes.
Going 8-3, and our three losses came to the Big Three in the state of Florida, losing 47-46 at Florida State in the season opener, and then 12-7 to Miami. We had a Hail Mary to the end zone, and our receivers collided together. Otherwise, it would have been complete. And then we lost by 7 to the Gators in the swamp. So yeah, that 1983 Miami team is one that I'm more familiar with than most people would think, considering I was 2 years old at the time, and I watched that 1983 film growing up. My dad subjected me to it.
I remember coming to Greenville. In fact, this is a funny story. I don't know how much time we have, but I want to say 81 season we came up there. and I was the host. And I didn't do color, but I was like, here, welcome everybody. Blah, 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 blah. So our play-by-play guy lived in Jacksonville, Florida, which for some people may not know is like the northeast part of the state. So we fly up, and our play-by-play guy is going to drive in the morning for what I think was a maybe noon or 3:30 kickoff. We get a phone call. Of course, this is way before cell phones. And we find out that he had gone to Greenville, South Carolina.
I knew it. It happens all the time.
All of a sudden, I'm about that close to making my play-by-play debut, and I wasn't exactly prepared for it. And he showed up about a half hour before kick to the correct Greenville and got his way through the game. So I remember that trip. I think we won, but I don't remember for sure. That was a weird year. We were actually on probation for some minor violations and couldn't go to a bowl game and won like 8 or 9 games that year, but that's the way it goes.
No doubt about it. That happens all the time, especially at the Charlotte airport. One of my, I'll just say a radio owner, I won't say the person's name, but they literally had 2 terminals side by side. One was Greenville, North Carolina. One was Greenville, South Carolina. And my boss sat in the Greenville, South Carolina terminal by accident because it said Greenville up there. He wasn't paying attention. So he had to get the next flight to Greenville, North Carolina. So,
oh man, well, you could drive to Greenville from Charlotte.
Yeah, it's very short.
And what I do when I come to ECU is I just take I can get a nonstop into Raleigh and I'll just drive from there. It's just easier and cheaper.
No question about it. Dave, as far as when you're talking about, we have Major League Baseball starting up, of course, the NBA, NHL. I don't know. I just, no offense to people from Seattle. I'm still trying to get the name of their NHL franchise. What is it, Kraken? I just don't understand that. I'm trying to get my head. I don't know.
It sounded to me like it's a Danish dessert.
I'm trying to get,
that,
yeah, exactly.
Like they up at Epcot Center, maybe in the Danish buffet over there, they serve a Kraken at the buffet, and it's a delicious pastry that has Danish roots. I heard it. I didn't look into the story, honestly. As far as why they would name it that, I would hope that they've had a lot of meetings, a lot of people zooming their way through these meetings over the last few months, and that they've done the right thing. We'll see.
Yeah, and then, of course, the team I pull for, I guess it's now going to be the Washington football team. So there's plenty of time to come up with a nickname, a new nickname, and we won't get into that subject. But certainly I thought for sure they would have a nickname instead of just doing generically. Well,
I'll go back. I'm from Northern Virginia, so I still remain a fan. But I'll be honest, I was embarrassed by the name after a while. So I'm glad they're changing it. And if they just want to be Washington FC and sound like a soccer team for a year, that's okay with me. They need change in that organization, as you've seen undoubtedly the stories that came out in the last week or so. I still want them to win games, and I'm glad they hired Ron Rivera. I thought that was a smart move, but they need to make that change. And don't change the colors. There's plenty of good names out there. They'll figure it out. But that's an organization that, much as I root for them, they've got to make a lot of changes.
And maybe new ownership. We'll see how that goes. I don't know. It's a crazy, certainly crazy time there. As far as any sense of normalcy, one of the things that comes to mind we've been talking about is the number of games for college football, and one of our concerns is with certain, what was it, the SWAC or I was trying to remember the conference that they've already announced they're going to have spring football, and they're going to have like 8 weeks of training, and then they're going to have that. But my concern is, I was telling Bubba, my concern is the number of games that you would play in the first part of 21, and then you got to turn around and you've got a season if you have a fall season. Does that mess up 21 where you only have yet again another conference only schedule? But it's a crazy time we live in where things you would never dream of spring football. You think about just the spring practices and a exhibition game, a glorified scrimmage, if you will, and now that's become where that might be reality for all of us.
Be honest with you, I don't like spring football for a couple of reasons. And you mentioned one of them, the turnaround. And I don't care if these are 20-year-old bodies. They're beat up. And I'll tell you this, if we have a fully unleashed 2021 season, we're going to start in August because there's revenue to be made and made up. And that 2021 season is going to be a gigantic makeup party if we can get to that. The other problem with spring is, and I don't know how many people have brought this up, let's understand, I know Bubba and Dave, you know this, and I know a lot of your audience knows this, but such a tiny percentage of these guys will ever play another down of football once they leave school. A tiny percentage. And they'll never get paid for it. They've got to go on to and get on with their lives and use what they've learned being a pirate and go out in the world. So at that time, all your guys who were supposed to graduate in May, are you now going to ask your seniors who really need to get their degrees and maybe going on to masters or doctorates to work on the 20 hours of football and take away from time that they need to finish their senior years? That's a tremendous amount of pressure. It's enough to ask them to do it in August, September, October, November. Now you're asking them, you've got your finals. You've got all of these things going on academically. The other thing is, if you have players who are good enough to be drafted, are they going to even play? And we don't know what's going to happen to the NFL draft. The NFL's been real stubborn, as you know. So are we still going to have a draft at the usual time? And these guys are going, hold everything. I'm not playing now. There's no way, because if you get hurt in September, that's one thing. You get hurt in April, that could cost you an entire year of your NFL career and cost you potentially millions of dollars. So it's going to be an unpredictable slate if we get to that. And I'm hoping we don't. I'd be perfectly happy with a 7-8 game season and, understanding that some young men are going to test positive. It's impossible not to in this environment. And we can still manage to croak something out. But I'm just not sure we can. I go up and down with this. I have been harshly pessimistic, ridiculously optimistic, cautious on both. I don't know if this thing is cautious pessimism, but I think I've had it. And right now, I'm a little more pessimistic than I would like to be.
No doubt.
We've really enjoyed the visit, but before we let you go, why don't you tell our viewers and listeners how they can follow you on social media, and then also I know you during this time, the last several months, you've been more active on your YouTube channel with your Daily Dave or almost Daily Dave, where you'll have 5, 6, 7 minutes of thoughts on the happenings in the sports world. So go ahead and plug those things.
Well, thank you, Bubba. I appreciate that. Yeah, on Facebook Live tomorrow, and I do Mondays and Fridays at 12 o'clock Eastern, I do a thing called a Nooner with Dave LaMont. And that's about 25 minutes. And eventually, as soon as I can learn the technology that you guys have mastered, I'm going to start bringing some folks on as well. And it's just, as you said, some sports thoughts, some non-sports thoughts. I'm trying to work on fixing the English language as well in those. And then the Almost Daily Dave covers the rest of the week. And to be honest with you, guys, I was going to do it live on YouTube until I learned that after 90 minutes, I still can't figure out how to go live on YouTube. So those are going on Facebook. All of them wind up on the Dave LaMont, just like it's spelled. You have on my screen, on the screen right there on YouTube. And so please subscribe. It is free. And Facebook Live, Dave LaMont. I also have Dave LaMont 1 on Twitter, although I haven't been as active there. I don't know if you guys know it. Twitter's not always the nicest place in the world. And but I certainly appreciate the opportunity to be with you guys. I've loved talking to you, and I hope everything's going well for Pirate Nation.
And Dave, one final thing to plug your event for the PBA. Can you tell folks again how they can watch that? I think we stream.
Well, sure. It will be August 9th. And Dave, I don't actually know what time. The event has been changed, and I'll publicize it, and I'll send you all the note if you would, if you can. But it'll be August 9th. It's the Battle of the Goats, Walter A. Williams Jr., Pete Weber, and Norm Duke from Aberdeen, North Carolina. Unfortunately, I don't think they're going to be allowing fans there, but it will be on Flow Bowling. That's one word, FLObowling.com. And if you can join us, please do.
That'll be awesome. Dave, thank you so much. Good luck with the broadcast, Dan. And obviously, hopefully we can have you back and talk some sports in the fall or beyond.
Anytime, guys. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
All right. Have a great night. Appreciate you.
You too.
All right. Bye-bye. All right. We're going from Dave to Dave. So it's Dave Gone Wild. And with us now, Bubba, a very special guest, organization that I've loved for many years. And you've outdone yourself with both Daves tonight.
Absolutely. Syracuse alum, spent more than 30 years now in the Winston-Salem market. Welcome in the executive director of the NSMA, Dave Goren. Dave, we appreciate you joining us.
Bubba and Dave, good to be with you. It's easy. All you just have to say is Dave, and you're going to be right, 3 out of the 4 tonight, right?
That's right. We've set a record, Dave. The most Daves we've ever had on the show is 2. So tonight it's 3. So you're
Ratings
part of
going
history.
up. Ratings just going right through the roof.
That's right. It's a great name. But I age myself, Bubba. I was thinking about Newhart, where they had Daryl, Larry, my other brother Daryl, my other brother Daryl. So I was thinking about that driving home from my day job. But Dave, honored to have you on. Love your organization. And certainly, Bubba and I were joking about how the very fact of all the greats, when you think of, you start household names that come every year to your event, it's just amazing. I know it was in Salisbury. I know you guys have moved it, he told me, to Winston-Salem a couple years ago.
Right, correct. We moved it 3 years ago to Winston-Salem, and unfortunately, like everybody else, had to cancel this year's awards weekend, which was scheduled the last Saturday, Sunday, Monday in June. And now we're just crossing our fingers that we get a widely available and widely used vaccine as soon as possible, not only for the resumption of games, but for us to get back to it next year as well.
And Dave, a couple friends of ours, speaking of David Glenn, I know he's won Sportscaster of the Year, and also another dear friend I've known for many years, the voice of the Pirates, Jeff Charles. 2 guys I know that have won the North Carolina Sportscaster of the Year. Can you talk, I guess, for fans that don't know, I guess we need to back up. Can you talk about the awards and your organization?
Sure. I'll go back to the beginning. I'll try to do it as Reader's Digestly as possible.
Okay.
There was a gentleman by the name of Pete DiMizio, who was a New Jersey native, had moved to Salisbury, North Carolina, I guess in the 1940s or 50s. And he owned an Italian restaurant in Salisbury that was very popular, apparently. He was also a boxing promoter, and in order to get the sports writers and sportscasters to come cover his boxing card, he had them come eat at his restaurant, because you know how we are in sports media, we love to eat. And at some point he said, you know what, we need to do something to honor you guys. And so they started the North Carolina Sports Broadcasters and Sports Writers Banquet at his restaurant in 1953. That went so well, they said, let's take this thing national. He died in 1958, so they postponed it a year. A local group of about 8 or 9 people in Salisbury, North Carolina, picked up the ball, ran with it. They sent out 6,000 paper ballots all across the country in 1959 and elected a state sportscaster and sports writer of the year from every state, I think, and then a national sportscaster and sports writer. And they had their first national awards banquet at Catawba College on April 12th, 1960, which just happens to be 3 weeks before I was born. And so we were due to have our 61st annual last month. They added the Hall of Fame in 1962 with Grantland Rice as the first inductee. We now are, I believe, over 100 in the Hall of Fame. And everybody who's anybody in the sports media world has been to either little old Salisbury or now Winston-Salem. It's amazing the draw and the people that come, because I think they respect the tradition and the history of the organization, the people who started it.
And if people don't know, that's where the home of Cheerwine and Food Line started there. So for people that, and not too far from Mr. China Grove there, I was wondering, Dave, how can we nominate Bubba for the North Carolina Sportscaster of the Year?
Yeah.
Well,
right.
All you have to do is be a member of the organization. And what we do is, actually this dovetails nicely or segues nicely into, well, how do you decide who the winners are? Our members I mail out what's basically a blank ballot middle of October, and you have a month to provide up to 3 names for your state sportscaster, sports writer of the year, and the national sportscaster and sports writer. I send out an email to our current Hall of Famers and maybe a couple other board members who belongs on the Hall of Fame finalist ballot. So November 15th, I have all the state and national results, and we take the top 2+ ties for each state, and then top 10+ ties for the national sportscaster and sports writer. And we put 10 finalist sportscasters and 10 finalist sports writers on the final ballot. That gets emailed out December 1st, and our members have the entire month of December to vote. And then I start calling all the winners, sometimes New Year's Day, if not January 2nd. It takes me a week to a week and a half to reach all of them. You should see my Excel sheet databases that I have on my computers with all my contact info that I start building for the awards weekend in June. And then we make the announcement middle of January usually, and then start preparing. It's a logistical mountain, but it's a lot of fun, and I enjoy it.
Dave, I was telling Bubba, I was listening to David Glenn one day. Obviously, worked with Dave for a number of years in Raleigh. Share the same studio from a few years, and I'll never forget him talking about the show, how much he enjoyed being at your banquet. And he looks up and there's Bob Costas dancing with the lovely and talented Maria. I'll never forget that. And I laughed really hard. He's like, that's true. Like, how many times do you look around the room? There's Dan Patrick, there's Bob Costas, there's Marv Albert. Like, that's just amazing. The men and women you get there.
Well, and you almost said it exactly. I've told the story. I've been in the back when we did it in Salisbury, in the lobby to the gym at Catawba College, where we held the banquet for several years, and there'd be 300 plus people packed in there, and it's hotter than heck. And I'm looking around. It's like, just like you said, there's Bob Costas, there's Dick Vitale, there's the president of ESPN. It's like, what the heck am I doing here? Just little old me. But it's as I said, it's very gratifying to see the people who do show up. And last year we had 60 of our 105 state winners showed up in Winston-Salem. So to have that kind of buy-in, and we don't pay for them to get here. They pay a small amount, and then we put them up for up to 3 days in a hotel, and then all the food and drink at our events. As you might imagine, it's quite the expensive proposition over a 3-day awards weekend. So we don't have to make money. We just have to keep it going. That's the idea. But to see the people who show up, and some of them will leave the day before and get here a day before, and they're usually going back the day after. So they're taking up to 5 days out of what in most cases are very busy schedules to come. So I certainly appreciate that, and it's so fun to meet not only the Costases and the Chris Bermans and the Dick Vitales, but to make lifelong friends with the state sportscaster of the year from Idaho or New Mexico. To me, that's the coolest thing about it.
You tell us, as far as can you announce like the winners overall for this year, even though you didn't have the banquet?
Yeah,
or like
and,
the top
and
people in North Carolina.
Sure, and it's on our website. I'm gonna have to cheat on my phone, which is almost dead because I was taking pictures of the weird cloud formations on my drive home from work. Let's see, North Carolina, David Glenn and John Forsland, the voice of the Carolina Hurricanes, tied for North Carolina Sportscaster of the Year. And Ed Harden of the Greensboro News and Record was our North Carolina Sports Writer of the Year. National Sports Writer for the third straight year was Adrian Wojnarowski, Woj from ESPN. And National Sportscaster of the Year, it was Kevin Harlan, who won it 2 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
And he came with his entire family 2 years ago. It was great to meet. I had never met him. It was great to meet all of them. Woj actually didn't come. He was going to 2 years ago. And as you know, our awards weekend falls right between the NBA draft and free agency. So that's his bread and butter time. So he was planning on coming just the night of the banquet 2 years ago. He emailed me 2 nights before. He said, I just can't. But he watched the live stream of the banquet and was then upset that he didn't come. So he said, I will be there last year. And he was. And he brought his whole family as well. That was cool. Hall of Famers, let's see. We have 3 deceased members and 3 living. The 3 deceased are Dick Young, legendary New York sports writer at the Daily News and the Post. Kaywood Ledford, legendary voice of the Kentucky Wildcats, most associated with the basketball team. And Skip Carey, legendary TBS voice of the Atlanta Braves. The 3 living ones, Michael Wilbon, Dan Patrick, and Tom Verducci. So they have, aside from Wilbon, and that's his first honor with the organization, the others have all been either to Salisbury or Winston-Salem or both. And looking forward to seeing them. And then we'll have families of some of the deceased ones come as well. And then that's always touching. I mean, they're always Dick Schaap, the late Dick Schaap, won 5 years ago, and his widow came and spoke, and it was a touching moment.
No question about it.
a moment ago, Dave referenced me living in China Grove. I've been here for nearly 10 years now, but I'm originally from Lexington. I'm a North Davidson alum, class of 2000. And a lot of my memories growing up, watching WXII, I remember you, Dan Rath, and so forth on there during those years. A lot of excellent memories, just sports in general, and obviously the high school football coverage. And, preparing for this interview, I didn't realize then, like I do now, that you had Boston roots. I know Bob Ryan, a lot of times he'll attend the event. We had him on the show back several weeks ago. He's just such a tremendous source of knowledge and tremendous writer and so forth. And Bob Ryan, just those conversations we had about the Celtics of the 70s and 80s. What are your memories growing up in that Boston market of going? I'm assuming you maybe made some trips to the Boston Garden and watched Larry Bird. And
sure did. I covered those teams in the mid '80s when they and the Lakers were trading championships. That was a lot of fun. I go back my first Celtics game, and I actually have a picture of the cover of the program on my phone. Was the day after Christmas, 1967. So I started with the latter part of the Bill Russell, Sam Jones, John Havlicek teams that were winning championships, and then segued into those Larry Bird teams and Kevin McHale and Robert Parrish and all those guys. But Bob Ryan, to your point, he and Peter Gammon started the Boston Globe on the same exact day. It was the day after Robert F. Kennedy was assassinated, and their first job, one of them took the American League and one took the National League, and they called all the teams. Their job was to find out what the teams were going to do to pay respects in memory of Robert F. Kennedy. So I started reading Bob Ryan and Peter Gammon's from the time I was 8 years old. And I learned why things happened with the Red Sox and Celtics because of the two of them, as well as Will McDonough on football and Kevin DuPont, and before him, Fran Rosa on hockey, Leslie Visser, who's one of our Hall of Famers. In fact, the Boston Globe has more Hall of Famers in the NSMA than any other outlet. So I was fortunate. I told them, I think it was my first year working at the organization, or it might have been the year that I won the North Carolina Sportscaster Award right after I left WXI. And Peter, I think it was the year Peter went in the Hall of Fame, but it was either 2009 or 2010, and they're both there. So here are two of my sports writing heroes that I grew up reading. And so I had my picture taken between the two of them. And I said, my mother, I would probably thank you for my career. My mother would probably blame you for it. But Bob's great. We got him into High Point University as a writer in residence or scholar in residence. He comes once or twice a year and talks to the kids there. He used to do it at Catawba College when we were in Salisbury. So he loves doing that kind of thing. And it's another gratifying thing to see that the vast majority, and I can't name anybody who doesn't, loves to give back to the younger generation or their communities, because we're all sports fans at heart.
I remember those teams very well, Dave. I'm a little bit older than Bubba. Bubba was in diapers when they were, maybe a little bit beyond that, but when that big rivalry between Boston and LA. And I was just telling Bubba, I'm so old that the NBA used to be on CBS. And if you wanted to watch the NBA on television, it seemed like the Celtics were on like every week. And so that's how I became a Boston fan back in the day. Of course, now we have the Hornets, but Charlotte didn't have a team up until 88, something like that. So I was a Celtics fan first. And those teams were just amazing with the dominance. And I was talking in that interview, people could listen with Bob Ryan, but I was telling him about, I feel like that it's a shame that people don't talk about Bill Russell, how many titles he won. Everybody talks about LeBron and Jordan, and that's different eras. And I love both of them, and I love Bill Russell, but it's a shame that people don't talk about Bill Russell and how many titles he won.
In his last couple of years, he was the player coach of the team.
Right.
Yeah, he was amazing to watch. As I said, so my first game was late last week of 1967, and I would go to a couple games. I grew up about 40 miles southwest of Boston, and my dad had gone. You tell people now who are used to sold out Boston Garden and TD Garden, whatever it was called. I remember the days when they would draw like 4,000 a game, and,
Wow.
and the Boston Bruins would bang out the place. So Boston, much more of the ranking used to be baseball, hockey, basketball, football, and now it's almost flipped. I mean, it's still a Red Sox town, but Celtics, Bruins are probably about on equal footing now, and the Patriots, I think, have surpassed them because of all the success that they've had.
And no doubt about it. I know, Bubba, did you want to put up our comment from Johnny Gardner?
Yeah, and one of our loyal viewers and listeners, Johnny Gardner, chimes in, and he was wondering if Vin Scully had ever been in attendance.
Vin Scully, I think, came once. I think it may have been when he went in the Hall of Fame. It was before I was involved. I want to say that was back in the early 2000s or 90s. He was there the same year Bob Hope came to the awards banquet.
Wow.
It was Bob Hope, Vin Scully, General William Westmoreland. I'm trying to think who else came that year. But if you look, and I'll try to pull it up here, but look at the Hall of Fame class that year. I mean, just and Flip Wilson, the comedian, had been, Andy Griffith, Bobby Knight came. There were just so many recognizable names. If you go back and look, that it's it even baffles me most times, most years. We don't go quite for the entertainment side anymore because, I mean, my personal feeling is this is the one thing that's about us, not the people we cover. So, I mean, John Elway presented Rick Riley for the Hall of Fame 4 years ago. So there are a lot of big names. Let's see. Vin Scully would have been. Where is he?
One of my favorite broadcasters of all time. I tell you what, when he and Joe Garagiola were doing the baseball on NBC, that was amazing. They did a great job. One of my favorite broadcasting pairs of any sports broadcast period was those two guys. They were really great together.
I only have one problem with Vin Scully. He's the Dodgers guy. My National League team is the Giants.
Uh-oh.
So I'm Red Sox Giants. So my two least favorite teams are the Yankees and Dodgers. But he is awesome. I've had the chance to talk to him on the phone a couple of times, and he is just as smooth on the phone as he is on the air. And
definitely, I don't think there's anybody in baseball that can tell a story better. I think there are a lot of people that they have misconceptions about baseball because they think it's so laid back and easy. I was like, are you kidding me? There's a lot of downtime, and you've got to be able to talk. You can't just sit there and wait and wait and wait. You have to fill in the gaps there. And I think baseball is right up there, one of the hardest sports, if not the hardest to call.
I mean, you better be a good storyteller. If you're not, you probably will become one, or you won't be in that business very long. But you're right. He was a master storyteller. And I think the way that you become that is you do your homework. You read. And that's the advice I give to young people who are trying to break into this business. Read, write, because reading informs your writing. But write. So you practice, even if you are a play-by-play person where you're not necessarily writing things for broadcast, it'll still make you a better broadcaster because you'll be better informed and you'll have more stuff to pull out of your brain. Those things, write, read, and network you behind off.
Did you get that, Bubba?
Yeah, I got you. Now, Dave, you've been in your current position for 11 or 12 years now, but prior to that, from 88 to 2008, you were with WXII, like I referenced earlier. So what are some of your top memories? I was actually I heard an interview earlier today with David Glenn. He was on Pirate Radio in Greenville, and David was just talking about how being in the Raleigh Triangle area over the last 2-3 decades, one of the unique things about being in the state of North Carolina is that you obviously have the mix of college and professional sports, where in certain markets that's not the case. It's pretty much all college or all professional, like in his native Philadelphia. So what are some of your top memories from your time in Winston-Salem in that WXII role?
Well, there's a lot, and it's sometimes hard to remember them all, but I would say probably my top memory was the Hurricanes winning the Stanley Cup and being there for Game 7 in what still stands today as the loudest building I've ever been in. Whether they didn't amplify some of that sound, maybe, but then to be in the locker room afterwards, because I'd grown up a huge hockey fan as a kid and then kind of lost touch with it because it was awful, because they allowed all the clutching and grabbing. In fact, the year the Hurricanes won the Stanley Cup was the year they started calling all of the obstruction penalties, so holding, hooking, and made it a more free-flowing game. They had a speedy team, and it paid off for them. But I was fortunate that year. 2006 was an Olympic year, and WXI being an NBC station, we had that 7:30 to 8 o'clock program during the Olympics called the Olympic Zone, which was basically another vehicle to sell local advertising. And that year they wanted all the local on-air talent to show a Winter Olympic sport. And they knew I played men's league. I shouldn't even say men's league because women played too. Rec league hockey here in Winston-Salem. Was very lucky to have the ice rink within a mile drive of the TV station, so I could do my 6 o'clock show and go and play and come back and do the 11. But I went one day in late January before the Olympics and got on the ice with the Hurricanes Olympians after their practice. Now, as somebody who grew up a huge hockey fan and loved it from the time I was 7 or 8 years old, then having played it for several years at that point, and I'm standing there. I have to wait through their 90-minute practice, and the speed at which they practice was incomprehensible to even me, somebody who's familiar with the game. I started getting a little more nervous as time went on, because I'm figuring the last thing these guys are going to want to do after they bust their behinds for 90 minutes is entertain some, at that point, 45-year-old TV sports guy who thinks he can play hockey. They could not have been nicer. We mic'd up Brett Hedican. Had Eric Stahl, Frankie Cabriolet, who played defense for Slovakia, I think, and Martin Gerber, who was the goalie, who played goalie for the Swiss team. So I did a few rushes in, tried to beat them, and then stood by the side of the net and have those guys feed me while I tried. I had to beat once I hit the post, so I didn't have the great. I beat Martin Gerber and the puck went in the net, but they were great, and it was a fun story. So fast forward, they then win the Stanley Cup. Five months later, I'm in that locker room, the noise, and they had, all the families are in there. They're all drinking out of the Stanley Cup. You couldn't even hear yourself think. And I'm kind of standing off to the side, being the kind of the big picture observer. And I look over, and I just happen to be looking in that direction. Brett Hedican, who we had mic'd up for the story, is sitting there at his locker, and his fellow defenseman, Mike Commodore comes in and sits next to him. And just the neatest little moment between teammates. Brett Hedican reaches out his hand, goes, "It was a pleasure to play with you this year." And I just thought that was unfortunately, my camera wasn't focused on that and you couldn't hear it. I just thought that was the coolest thing.
Dave, you were talking about that. I'm a huge Hurricanes fan, and I'll never forget the Stanley Cup. I had tickets to Game 1 way up in the 300 section. I'm looking up because I was way up there. And I'll never forget, they were down 3-1 going into the second intermission and right before the third period. And I'll never forget, I'm in the bathroom and there are a lot of Hurricanes fans, and it was like a library. It was silence, like being at a funeral. And all of a sudden, this Oilers fan from Edmonton, he comes in, he said, "Guys," he said, "why are you so sad?" He's like, "I watched many of these games. You still have a chance to win." And sure enough, we go back to our seats, and all of a sudden, the score, a quick goal, and that place where you were right. I've been to a lot of sporting events indoors. That's the loudest place I've ever been to. It felt like that third level. It felt like it was like bouncing. Like I was worried if we're gonna have like maybe that third level is going to go down to the ice. But I'll never forget that. And the other thing is, fast forward to the Caniac Carnival. They had the fan day that year in October, and we had to wait 2 hours. One of my good buddies, Lee, and I. And I'll never forget, he said, "Man, it's a 2-hour wait." I said, "Dude, our luck. They may never win it again. Who knows?" So we wait, and we finally get our chance. And they said, "Don't touch the Stanley Cup." They were very adamant, obviously, about that and being respectful. And there was two dudes with, they had like earpieces and they had sunglasses on. And the guy right before us, I thought that we're not going to get our picture with the Stanley Cup. The guy right before us puts his baby boy in the Stanley Cup. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I've waited 2 hours. I really thought they were going to shut the whole event down. And luckily they were very cool about it to him. And we got to take our picture. But I hate to think that was 2006. I'm hoping that they made a nice little run last year. And hopefully they can, I know they're getting ready to crank up here in about a week or so. But it'll be nice to see them. I know they got a tougher road this year, but hopefully they can make a little noise.
Yeah, if they even get through the first week, who knows? My Stanley Cup story was actually a year before, or 2 years before the Hurricanes moved to Greensboro first. I guess it was when the Avalanche won the Stanley Cup, and Claude Lemieux was on that team. His wife was from Vilas, North Carolina, up by Boone.
Okay.
And so he had won it once or twice before, so he had brought it home. So he brought it. The Stanley Cup was in Boone, North Carolina. So before, it doesn't sound as impressive now because of the Hurricanes, but to me that was one of the ultimate man bites dog stories. I said we have to go do that. So my sports photog and I went up to Boone, and we actually got to hold it. I have pictures of me holding it. My wife, who's fixing dinner in the other room, still doesn't understand why that's cool. She said, it's not like you won it, but it was pretty cool.
Dave, fast forwarding back to the present, in addition to your role as the executive director with the NSMA, I know you're teaching classes, or at least you have been, with the sports broadcasting school at Wake Forest, and then also spend time as the Deacon sideline reporter on the IMG network. So talk about those experiences and Dave Clawson's team going into the 2020 season, assuming we have football.
And that's the big question. I heard Dave LaMont talking about that, and I'm just like him. I go back and forth. I read an article that basically said with all of the contact points there are among a team and ancillary staff of 125 people, that there's no way without a vaccine that you'll be able to have a season. So we'll see. I'm going to my fourth fall semester teaching sports broadcasting. I do Monday nights, so I get a lot of athletes because they practice in the morning. A lot of fun for me, and it's part is giving back. It's helping. I think I use it knowing that those students, for the most part, don't want to be sportscasters. I use it to train them to be confident, effective communicators. And the ones who are athletes can use it on the other side when I'm interviewing them after a game. They've now been trained on why and how and what. So I enjoy that a lot. I have actually signed up to teach face-to-face this semester. They've put me out of the communication building into a different building that has a room large enough to physically distance up to 28 students. So we'll play that one by ear as well. And then sideline reporting for me is a blast. I started actually my last 4 years at WXII. I did part of the pregame show for home football games, which was basically just interviewing 3 people in a half hour. And then the same exact week as I started at NSMA, then NSSA, I started as sideline reporter. I did that for 3 years. I did color with Stan Cotton up in the booth for 2 years, and then have been back on the sidelines, I guess, 6 years now. So I've been a total of 15 years with the broadcast crew. I mean, that time has flown by, but I love being on the field for games. Even when I was in TV, I didn't want to sit up in the press box because I like to feel the game as much as I like to see it. And for me, you can see emotion better on the sideline. And to me, that's what sports is all about. And getting to know a number of the players through my class, it's neat seeing them in a different realm as well. And, if they don't do their work, I can always tell the coach. But Dave Clawson's done a great job building that program. His first 2 years here, he stuck with his program, do or die, and it was tough to watch. I mean, that first year was the worst offensive line I've ever seen in my life. They couldn't run the ball. Wasn't much better the second year, but you could see a little improvement. And then ever since then, it's been a lot of improvement.
And Dave, as far as speaking of Dave Clawson, what a job. I mean, I know that Wake Forest football had success with winning a championship in for ACC. I think it was 2006. But I know with Dave Clawson, he did great and before, and then it comes to Winston-Salem, to Wake Forest, and I'm just really happy for the Demon Deacons, for the fans, because I know that such a great school, and we've seen in the past where they could win. The same thing with the basketball program. Hopefully that things can turn around there, but certainly with football, I know that you guys are headed in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, it's not easy at a school that is that small in number, because you don't have the alumni base translated to, you don't have the donor base, so there's not as much money unless you get, a number of really, really wealthy people. That's, Wake's been fortunate with a handful of people that have stepped up and funded. Their facilities now for football and basketball are as good as anybody's in the country. But you still have to get the players into school. And if you can't cut it academically, you're not going to last long there. And that's the hardest thing for Wake. But now with their facilities, if you can do the schoolwork and you want to do the schoolwork, then it's a great place to be. It's fun to be around when they're winning, trust me, because I've been there when they haven't. And, I tell a lot of people, for every team that wins a game, somebody loses. So everybody can't win all the time. And, at Wake, I think what they can hope for at best is to maybe contend for a league title every 5 or 6 years. Other than that, maybe go to a bowl game 2 of every 3 or 3 out of every 4 years.
One of the things, Dave, we're very excited about being in Pirate Nation with East Carolina is having Wake back on the schedule. Maybe people don't know, but the very first game in Ficklen Stadium was against Wake Forest way back in the day in the 1960s. And as someone that's from the state of North Carolina, I graduated East Carolina in 95. I guess I'm a dinosaur now, but very happy to have Wake back on the schedule. I wish that we can get the Tar Heels and Blue Devils back on. But I think that my curiosity, I know you're in more of the western part of the state than I am. I'm in the eastern part of the state. But don't you think with budgets that we have now that we'll see more in-state rivals playing each other on a more frequent basis, or at least I hope?
I mean, now that you also have Charlotte and Appalachian, it's like, why not have the 4 and 3? I'm making quick math, 7 FBS schools. I mean, they should rotate through the other 4. I would think. I think that would be a lot of interest. I think Dave Clawson enjoys playing Appalachian, whereas some previous coaches, for them, they take it as a no-win situation. But you know what? You have to beat people to go to bowl games. So now that they're all FBS and they count on your 1-loss record, then go for it.
You kind of created a nice segue for me, because I was going to mention that series with Appalachian. Unfortunately, it looks like we may not even have football, and if we have an all-league schedule, that would be a blessing at this point. But should we have some non-conference games, and that was on the docket this year, the Apps coming down to play at BB&T Field. And like you're saying, back during your time at WXII, that was a tremendous rivalry when Coach Jerry Moore was there.
Yeah,
and various coaches were at Wake Forest. So competitive. The Deeks won a thriller a few seasons ago up at Kid Brewer Stadium. I was there that day when Appalachian missed a couple of last-second field goals.
That was my student, 6'7" Scotty Washington, blocking that extra point.
Yeah. And
oh wow,
that was a heck of a day, heck of a setting for college football. So. Whether it's this year or in the future, look forward to that rivalry resuming, like you're saying.
Absolutely. And there's, no reason why Charlotte and ECU shouldn't be on their schedule as well. And same for the rest of the Big Four. I think, if each of those 3 schools gets one of the Big Four every year, I think that'll create more excitement. And just, think of the fans of all those schools, just, giving everybody the business. And, that's what makes being a fan fun.
Dave, as far as your organization is concerned, is that something people could donate to, or how do you pull these magnificent events off every year?
I'm not sure. I've been doing it now. As we say in sports, I'm in my 11th season. I'm still not sure how we do it. Yeah, we have, if you go to our website, which is nationalsportsmedia.org, there is a donate button right there on the homepage.
Okay.
If you want to become a member, you can sign up and be a member. We'd love to have you as well. It's, anybody can come to the awards weekend. And so to be there among people you read or watch or listen to, if you're a sports fan, I don't know how it gets any better than that. And the stories, because that's what we do. We're storytellers. The stories during that awards weekend are off the charts.
Well, maybe we can come there and maybe when Bubba wins the North Carolina Sports Broadcaster of the Year, we'll be there, and I'll put a tux on. I'm not one to wear a tux, but I'll put a tux on for you, Bubba.
I actually wore one last
Hey, what did I do to deserve these subtle jabs?
But we've had David Glenn did their show from there. You guys just come and do your show from there.
That would be fun. That would be fun. No doubt about it.
That'd be like shooting fish in the barrel to pull guests. It'd be,
Oh my God, Bubba has come so far. When we first started the podcast, and I was by myself originally, and then he's like, "How do I don't, hopefully it's politically correct to tell this story, but he said, how do I get guests, Dave? How do I do it?" And he was, literally knew sports very well, but never produced a show in his life. I said, "Well, Bubba, it's kind of like sales, I said, if you hear a whole bunch of no's, eventually you'll get a yes." And that's probably the correct one. The politically incorrect one, I said, it's kind of like asking a girl on a date. At least a couple, 2 or 3 will say yes out of 10. And that's your show right there. So
there you go.
Maybe with the broadcast there, we'd be able to get, even if we got a few out of the hundreds of people there, we would be doing well.
Well, especially, broadcasters and writers are used to doing these, so you're not going to get told no very often.
Right. Well, Dave, thank you.
And that's the other thing. If you guys both join NSMA, we have the directory of all the people you can. That's your new Rolodex.
Exactly.
Bubba, you're going to sign up right now.
Yeah. Dave, I just had a very quick follow-up. You're talking about shooting fish in a barrel. There was a friend of mine in college. I played small college football, and I was at this school in southeastern Kentucky, Cumberland College. It's now the University of the Cumberlands. And this nut, he and some of his friends went fishing with a net in a fish hatchery. So
how big were the holes in the net? That's the question. I love it.
Dave, how can people, can you give that website where they can join the organization?
Nationalsportsmedia.org. And there's a big Join Today tab right on the top. Easy peasy.
All right. And how can they follow you on social media?
Let's see if I remember them all. Twitter is at Dave_Goren. We also have at NSMA Sports Media, and Facebook is Dave Goren and National Sports Media Association. And you might want to check out our YouTube channel, National Sports Media Association. I did a big story on our Jim Nantz College Sportscaster of the Year award, which we've presented the last 9 years, and you'd be amazed at where the people who won that award are now. And also we've been doing these weekly Zoom panels that are kind of geared. Well, I was going to say they're geared toward the younger crowd, but they're actually useful for all ages. And we tackle a different subject every week. I was on vacation last week, and I've had computer issues this week. In fact, this is a borrowed laptop I'm talking to you guys on. So, hoping to get back to it next Thursday at 2:00. We're doing how to get a job in sports media in the COVID economy. So I'm looking forward to that one.
Well, I'll definitely be tuned in for that one for sure. Dave, thank you so much.
Very
and
well.
I look forward to meeting you in person. And Bubba and I are going to join after we get done with the broadcast, and love to see you next year in Winston-Salem when you have the event.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. And happy to do this anytime. It's a lot of fun.
All right. Take care, and appreciate you. We'll have you back on the road soon.
Absolutely. See you guys.
All right. See you. All right. That's Dave. We had a lot of Daves tonight. Certainly Dave LaMont and Dave Goren. Thank you so much for them. Bubba, what a great show. As always, I'll have to, I'm not worthy.
Yeah.
Great show. 2 great guys. And yesterday, folks, we had a matinee show, Bubba. I wanted to make sure that we mentioned that too. I tell you what, I know I'm in a love fest as far as coaches are concerned. You've coached, I've coached. but I'm a huge fan of Kim McNeil as a person and a coach for East Carolina. I know I'm a homer. I'm a cheerleader for the university, but I think that she's phenomenal. We had her on yesterday again. And Bubba, I know you guys, I had some technical difficulties, unfortunately, but you guys, I know, did a great job. And I'm glad everything was okay. I thought we were having an epic failure there, but it turned out to be great. And I know I want folks to, we're going to archive that. And for people to hear that in the podcast, we'll have that out tonight. And then being Thursday night. But I wanted you to talk about that and some upcoming shows we have coming up.
Yeah, like you're saying, I was doing some extreme multitasking yesterday afternoon. Unfortunately, our game had been rescheduled from Saturday to yesterday at 10 a.m. And the person who rescheduled the game, and that's what they had failed to change the date. So we didn't have umpires, and we had to wait right at an hour and a half for those umpires. I had a feeling that something like that would happen that would kind of interfere with our interview with Kim McNeil and Jada Payne. But fortunately, I was able to multitask. You were able to get the show started. Kyle was able to join in, and the three of us were able to make it happen and bring it home, so to speak. But yeah, it was a tremendous interview, and Coach McNeil is so personable. Just we have a tremendous woman at the helm of our women's basketball program, and I certainly expect that program to have a lot of success moving forward, even more so now with Connecticut going out of the league. I think we're going to be contending for championships for sure. And Jada Payne coming on, and she's one of the most successful women's basketball players we've ever had, third all time in scoring, despite the fact that she only had 3 years as a Pirate after transferring in from LaSalle. So she scored right at 1,800 points in her career. She shot the three well, so versatile, and played in the WNBA for a short while. And she's from Hickory, North Carolina. So that was kind of the idea of we obviously wanted her to have her on anyway, but I was like, hey, bring her on with Coach Kim McNeil.
Exactly.
And show, hey, we can keep top women's basketball talent in the state of North Carolina like this home at East Carolina and have success in the American Athletic Conference for sure. So when we had that, I can definitely go back and check it out. It's been well received and well viewed thus far. You see right now scrolling on the bottom of the screen, our 50 Pirates 50 days will continue tomorrow at 8:15. We'll catch up with former East Carolina place kicker Michael Barbour, one of the most, if not the most, accurate place kicker in East Carolina history. In 2010, he was 16 out of 18. And then in 2011, not quite as accurate, but the majority of his misses were in excess of 50 yards. And I think he maybe missed one or two kicks inside of 40 yards in his career, if that. And just remarkably accurate after transferring in from junior college for Coach Ruff. Excellent acquisition, to say the least, ensuring up the special teams. And he scored a lot of points for the Pirates. We were lighting up the scoreboard early on in the Ruff and McNeil era with Lincoln Riley directing that offense, and he was kicking a lot of PATs instead of field goals, which was nice. And then in addition to Michael Barbour on Saturday morning at 8:15, Robert Jones, not the linebacker Robert Jones, but another excellent Robert Jones that played for the Pirates, came in as a defensive lineman and transitioned to offensive line. He will be joining us to talk about his Pirate career.
That was great. I tell you what, very excited about certainly the 50 Pirates in 50 days. Thank you to all our listeners and viewers. It means the world to us. We're getting a lot of people that are watching us here. We had used Facebook Live a little bit, and obviously Bubba, we had started working with the YouTube channel, but it was so overwhelming when we first started this venture of doing a podcast. And Bubba you took it on your own to obviously work really hard. I appreciate you very much on the YouTube channel. And then lo and behold, we found, thanks to that, give a shout out to Riley. Yeah, the slugger there. Want to say hello to him. Riley's there's a future Pirate right there, and certainly I know he's doing really well, and certainly with travel baseball and future Pirate. Maybe Cliff Godwin will be giving you a scholarship here in the next decade or so. But certainly with this technology era where we're on Facebook Live and YouTube, live on our YouTube channel, Bubba's been tremendous. And I've said it before, one of the good things that came out of COVID was certainly this experience of streaming and broadcasting on two of the biggest platforms when you think about social media there is. So thanks to our viewers and our listeners. We have people that go all the way back when it was just a traditional podcast for sure. The comment there from Johnny says, that was a great show with Ruff and McNeil. I'm sorry, Coach McNeil. I mean, I was saying Kim McNeil. She's going to turn the corner very soon with the program, especially in the new wide open AAC Women's Hoops, plus Jada being on as well. Johnny, thank you very much. Yeah, it's Kim is tremendous. Her husband Corey. I tell you what, Bubba, you remember the when she had to go, her uncle passed away, and that Saturday when Corey was the filled in for her as the head coach. Do you remember that video that was like right after they won that game? That was just really cool to see the Lady Pirates get that win for him, and certainly for Coach McNeil. It was just really cool.
Yeah, you saw that raw emotion with Coach McNeil, Corey McNeil, that is, getting doused in the locker room, very much like that Cincinnati game, Coach Dooley's first year.
Oh yeah,
remember Coach Dooley coming in and the guys getting in with cups of water, Gatorade, what have you. So hopefully a lot more of that will be taking place in the future, and obviously you want the guys to have fun winning games, but hopefully these programs are going to get to a point where we're winning on a more consistent basis. And I mean, to be honest, and those things are expected, not that you'll never celebrate, but the celebrations may not be as frequent just because, hey, we're winning more ball games. We expect to beat Cincinnati or SMU or whoever the team may be.
Memphis, Houston. Well, hey, you know what, Bubba, if that's what it takes, I'll celebrate every time. We'll celebrate every time. Wins are hard to come by. I love it. I know exactly what you're saying, but certainly I love seeing those videos. And let's give a shout out to ECU with social media and those videos and the hype videos and different things they're doing an excellent job. And by the way, Bubba, I want to mention this. I'm putting you on the spot, but help me remember when my technical difficulties. I told you this before. I was getting ready to mention the women's team. Maybe some of you saw that on Twitter. They have a new Instagram account, and I was going to give I was going to mention that yesterday. I think, is it at WBBB or some of the Pirates?
It's at ECU WBBB. Excuse me, at ECU WBB. All right,
BB,
that's the same on Instagram or Twitter.
I just want to make sure that folks know that, and certainly. If you meet Kim McNeil, obviously we have on the phone and now here on Facebook Live and YouTube, we have had her on. She's been fantastic. Always said yes when we asked her to come on. And certainly we have other coaches at ECU that have done that as well. But Kim, in this particular case, we want to give her a shout out and appreciate her very much. I want to appreciate both Daves for coming on. They were fantastic. And hey, we had 3 Daves. Could you handle the 3 Daves? We had 3 Daves on tonight. Could you handle that, Bubba? Did you feel? I mean, we've had 3 Bubbas on before, so why not have? Well, I guess 2 of them were participating via the comments, but we've had 3 Bubbas on before. Why not 3 Daves?
Yeah, it was a struggle, but I made it through.
Now we've got to get 3 Kyles. We'll see if we can get Kyle Petty, Kyle Larson. Maybe not Kyle Larson right now, but for obvious reasons. But 3 Kyles. We'll see if we can get them on for sure. Thank you, Bubba, for putting that up on certainly on the screen for people can see, and you're listening. You put up again about for Twitter and Instagram, it's at ECUWBB, and certainly we want to make sure that we follow them and support them as much as possible. Bubba, do you have anything before we go?
Just join me tomorrow morning if you can't tune in live. Check out the archive on SoundCloud, Anchor, obviously right here on Facebook Live and our YouTube channel. Just make sure you subscribe. That way, whenever we post this content, you're alerted, and whenever your schedule allows, you'll be able to check it out. Michael Barbour tomorrow morning, 8:15, right here on Facebook Live and YouTube.
All right, it's our we have it a couple times a week, breakfast with Bubba. And so we'll have breakfast with Bubba on the Sports Objective tomorrow. 50 Pirates in 50 days, as Johnny puts up there. I saw that Triple D. So maybe we'll have a Triple D show again for sure. All right, Kyle was on assignment tonight. Appreciate him. Very much miss him. Appreciate both Daves, Bubba, and I'm Dave Richmond. You've been listening and watching the Sports Objective. Go Pirates.